Rowan adjusted the bracelet display for the third time that morning, sighing as she glanced around the gleaming jewelry store. The glass cases sparkled under the chandeliers, each piece worth more than her entire month's rent. She had been working here for nearly a year, and yet the dazzling wealth that paraded through the doors still amazed her. Her manager's voice cut through her thoughts. "Rowan, we have a customer who needs assistance. Be helpful." She turned, her polite smile ready only to freeze. Standing by the engagement ring section was a man who looked like he'd walked straight out of a high-end magazine. Tall, broad-shouldered, with sharp features and dark eyes that held an intensity that made her pulse stutter. He was handsome, yes, but there was something else about him. He exuded confidence, his navy blue suit fitting him like it had been tailored specifically for him. And judging by the watch on his wrist, one of those luxury brands she could never afford, he was someone who had money, a lot of it. Rowan cleared her throat and stepped forward. "Good afternoon. Can I help you find something?" The man glanced at her, his gaze assessing before he nodded. "I need a gift," he said. His voice was deep, smooth, and commanding. "Something elegant, timeless." "For a special occasion?" she asked, moving behind the counter. His lips quirked slightly. "Something like that," she nodded, pulling out a tray of diamond bracelets. "Is this for a romantic partner?" "No," his answer was immediate, almost too quick. "Just someone important." Rowan studied him, curiosity sparking. Most men who came in shopping for jewelry had a clear idea either they were guilty and buying something to apologize, or they were hopelessly in love. But this man, he was different. She picked up a delicate bracelet with a row of diamonds set in white gold. "This is one of our most popular pieces. It's classic and understated." He took it in his hand, running his fingers over the diamonds. "What would you choose?" She blinked. "Me." "Yes." He looked at her now, fully focused. "If you had to pick a piece, what would it be?" Rowan hesitated, then reached for a sapphire pendant nestled in velvet. "This," she said. "It's elegant but unique. The blue stands out, and it isn't just another diamond piece." He stared at the pendant for a moment before nodding. "I'll take it." Her brows lifted. "Just like that. You seem to know what you're talking about." His eyes lingered on her, the intensity making her breath hitch. "I trust your judgment." Rowan swallowed, then quickly turned to wrap the necklace. "Would you like it gift-wrapped?" "Yes." He reached into his pocket, pulling out a sleek black card, and put it under the name Zane Thatcher. Something in her brain clicked. That name sounded familiar, but she couldn't place it. Probably some executive or businessman. She rang up the purchase, trying not to pay attention to the absurd number on the register. The man didn't even blink as he inserted his card. "Thank you for your help, Rowan." Her breath caught. When had she told him her name? Before she could ask, he took the wrapped box and walked out, leaving behind only the faint trace of expensive cologne and an odd flutter in her chest. Rowan didn't expect to see him again. Customers came and went, especially the wealthy ones, treating the store as just another stop in their day. And yet, when she stepped into the store the next morning, there he was. Zane Thatcher stood near the glass display of luxury watches, his posture relaxed but his presence commanding. He turned as if sensing her before she even spoke. "You're back," Rowan said, surprised. "I needed another opinion," he said, his gaze steady, "and I trust yours." Something about the way he said it sent warmth curling through her, but she quickly pushed it aside. "Are you looking for another gift?" His lips lifted slightly. "Not exactly." "I realized yesterday that I never asked, do you wear jewelry yourself?" Rowan blinked. She glanced down at her wrist, bare except for the simple work-issued bracelet that signified her employment. "Not often." "I don't really have a need for it." Zane studied her for a moment, then motioned toward the display. "If you could choose anything from here for yourself, what would it be?" She hesitated. "That's not really, indulge me," he interrupted. There was something about the way he said it, like he was genuinely interested in her answer, that made her relent. She scanned the displays, then pointed to a pair of diamond drop earrings, delicate but striking. "These," she admitted, "they're timeless." Zane nodded. "They would suit you." She felt her face heat under his scrutiny, but before she could respond, her manager appeared, eyes narrowing. "Mr. Thatcher, I can assist you if you need anything," he said, his tone overly eager. Zane's gaze didn't waver from Rowan. "No need." Rowan has been more than helpful. Her manager's expression flickered with something unreadable before he nodded stiffly and walked away. Rowan turned back to Zane, trying to regain her composure. "So did you actually need help picking something today, or was this just a hypothetical exercise?" His lips pressed together, amusement flickering in his dark eyes. "Maybe I just wanted an excuse to see you again." She froze. Was he flirting? That couldn't be right. Before she could formulate a response, the store doors burst open, and a woman in an expensive coat strode inside, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. "Zane," she called, her voice carrying. Rowan watched as Zane's expression shifted, his easy demeanor tightening. The woman approached, placing a manicured hand on his arm. "I've been trying to reach you." "I've been busy," he said smoothly, removing her hand with a practiced ease. The woman's eyes flicked to Rowan, assessing. "And who is this?" Rowan straightened. "Just an employee," she said quickly, unwilling to step into whatever this was. Zane's gaze lingered on her for a second before he turned back to the woman. "Not now, Lillian." Lillian pursed her lips. "Fine. But we need to talk soon." With that, she turned and walked out as swiftly as she'd arrived. Rowan exhaled, unsure what had just happened. "A friend of yours?" Zane's jaw tightened slightly. "Something like that." She didn't push. It wasn't her business. But the way he had shut down the conversation so quickly made her wonder. He turned back to her, his expression unreadable. "I should go." "Of course." Rowan nodded, but as he headed for the door, she realized something. He hadn't bought anything this time. He had just come to see her. And for some reason, that unsettled her more than anything else. Rowan hadn't expected Zane to return after the strange interaction with the woman in the expensive coat. But 3 days later, he walked into the jewelry store again, his presence commanding the space without effort. She had been in the middle of organizing a shipment of luxury watches when she noticed him, his gaze scanning the room before settling on her. Something in her chest tightened, though she quickly forced herself to focus. "You're back," she said, keeping her voice neutral. His lips curved slightly. "I had a feeling you'd be here." "That's how jobs work," she said lightly, though she felt the weight of his attention. "Are you actually buying something this time?" He exhaled, almost amused. "Not today." She arched a brow. "Then why are you here?" Zane studied her for a beat before answering. "I wanted to see if you'd join me for dinner." Rowan blinked. "Dinner?" "Yes." His tone was calm, confident, as though he fully expected her to say yes. She hesitated, glancing toward the back where her manager was likely watching. "I don't think that's a good idea." "Why not?" She folded her arms. "Because you're a customer. That didn't seem to bother you before. That was before you started showing up just to see me." His eyes held something unreadable. "And is that a bad thing?" Rowan opened her mouth, then closed it. She wasn't sure how to answer. The truth was, she had thought about him since their last encounter, wondering what kind of man came back to a store just to speak with someone he barely knew. There was something about him that unsettled her, not in a dangerous way, but in a way that made her feel as if she were stepping into unfamiliar territory. "I have work," she said finally. "After," she exhaled. "You don't give up easily, do you?" "Not when I want something." The way he said it sent a flicker of heat through her, but she quickly pushed it aside. "Fine," she said before she could overthink it. "One dinner." His expression didn't change, but there was a shift in his posture, like he had expected her answer. "I'll pick you up at 8. I can meet you." He considered that for a moment, then nodded. "If that's what you prefer." She gave him a cautious look. "This isn't a date." "Of course not," he said smoothly. "Just dinner." Rowan wasn't sure why she felt like she had just agreed to something far more complicated than that. At exactly 8 o'clock, Rowan arrived at the restaurant he had chosen, a place so upscale she felt out of place the moment she stepped inside. The lighting was warm and intimate, the tables covered in crisp white linens. Soft music played in the background, and the scent of expertly prepared food filled the air. Zane was already there, seated at a table near the window. He stood when he saw her, his gaze sweeping over her in a way that made her suddenly self-conscious. "You actually came," he said as she slid into the chair across from him. "I said I would." His lips twitched. "Most people say things they don't mean." She tilted her head. "And do you?" His expression remained unreadable. "Not usually." A waiter appeared, pouring wine into delicate crystal glasses before slipping away. Rowan glanced at the menu, her stomach twisting at the sight of the prices. "I'm assuming you've been here before," she said, attempting to focus on anything other than the fact that even the appetizers cost more than her weekly grocery budget. "A few times. Let me guess, business dinners? Something like that." She placed the menu down. "You're not going to tell me what you do, are you?" He leaned back slightly. "Does it matter?" She frowned. "Most people talk about their jobs at dinner. Most people are boring." She huffed a quiet laugh. "That's an evasive answer." He considered her for a moment. "I run a company." She narrowed her eyes. "What kind of company?" "Acquisitions, investments." Her stomach dropped slightly. "So you're one of those men who buy failing businesses and sell them off for profit." "Not exactly," he said, watching her carefully. "I restructure companies. Give them a second chance before they collapse." She studied him, trying to determine if he was telling the truth. "That sounds complicated." "I was going to say ruthless." His lips pressed together slightly. "It can be." The waiter returned, taking their orders before disappearing again. Rowan tapped her fingers against the table, still processing everything. "So why exactly did you want to have dinner with me?" she asked finally. Zane took a sip of his wine before answering. "You're different," she blinked. "Different how?" "You don't know who I am and you don't care," she frowned. "Should I?" He exhaled through his nose, almost amused. "Most people do." Realization dawned on her. "You're famous, aren't you?" "Something like that." She shook her head. "You keep saying that." Zane leaned forward slightly, his eyes locked on hers. "Would it change anything if you knew?" Rowan hesitated. "I don't know." He studied her, then leaned back again. "That's why I didn't tell you." The food arrived, breaking the tension, but the question lingered between them. Rowan had the distinct impression that she had just stepped into something far bigger than she realized. And for the first time in a long time, she wasn't sure if she wanted to step back out. Rowan stepped out onto the terrace, the cool night air brushing against her skin as the city lights stretched endlessly before her. Zane had insisted on a rooftop venue for their next dinner, and now she understood why. The view was breathtaking. The skyline glittered like a sea of diamonds, reflecting in the infinity pool that edged the terrace. Everything about the evening felt surreal. She turned as Zane approached, 2 glasses of wine in hand. He handed one to her without a word, his gaze steady as she took it. There was something in the way he looked at her tonight, less guarded, more intent. She had spent the last few weeks unraveling pieces of him, yet he remained an enigma. "You're quiet," he noted, settling into the chair beside her. "I'm thinking," she admitted, swirling the wine in her glass. "About," she hesitated, then decided on honesty. "About how I ended up here." His lips curved slightly, the city lights casting sharp shadows across his features. "Do you regret it?" "No," she said without hesitation. "But I don't understand you." Zane tilted his head slightly, studying her. "What don't you understand?" She took a breath, choosing her words carefully. "You have wealth, power, you could be anywhere with anyone. But you walked into that jewelry store and somehow we're here." His expression didn't shift, but something in his posture did. He leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees. "You think this is random, isn't it?" "No," he said simply. "I don't do things without reason, Rowan." She held his gaze, searching for something beneath the surface. "Then tell me, why me?" He exhaled slowly, setting his glass down. "Because you don't look at me and see what the rest of the world does." Her heart stumbled. "And what does the rest of the world see?" "A name, a bank account." "A means to an end." She frowned. That's a lonely way to live. It is, he admitted. Until now. Rowan's breath caught. The weight of his words pressed between them, unspoken but undeniable. She had been cautious, hesitant to believe that whatever this was could be real. But Zane wasn't a man who played games. When he wanted something, he pursued it without hesitation. And right now, that something was her. The realization sent her pulse skittering. Before she could speak, Zane reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. Her stomach flipped. I didn't buy this for business, he said, watching her reaction. She swallowed, unsure if she could trust her voice. Slowly, he flipped the lid open, revealing the sapphire pendant she had chosen weeks ago, the one she had thought was for someone else. You remembered, she murmured. Zane's gaze softened. I didn't buy it for a client. Her fingers trembled as he placed the box in her palm. The weight of the gesture settled deep in her chest. You don't have to accept it, he said quietly, but I want you to. Rowan looked up at him, her heart hammering against her ribs. This wasn't just a gift, it was something more, a declaration. She closed her fingers around the box. I want to. Something shifted in his expression, relief maybe, or something deeper. Zane reached for her hand, threading his fingers through hers. Good, he murmured. The city stretched wide around them, but at that moment, nothing else existed. Just the quiet hum of possibility. Just them. Rowan's fingers curled around the velvet box as the weight of the moment settled between them. The sapphire pendant, her choice, the one she had thought belonged to someone else, rested in her palm, its meaning now unmistakable. Zane had bought it for her. She lifted her eyes to his, uncertain of what to say. The air between them had shifted, heavy with something unspoken, something undeniable. You don't have to wear it now, Zane said, his voice quieter than usual. I just needed you to have it. Rowan exhaled, tracing the edges of the box with her thumb. This isn't something you give to just anyone. No, he admitted. It isn't. Her chest tightened. She had spent weeks trying to understand him, trying to separate the man from the mystery of who he was. But this simple, deliberate act spoke louder than any explanation he could have given. She hesitated, then carefully opened the box. The sapphire gleamed under the terrace lights, deep blue against the delicate chain. Slowly, she brushed her fingers over it, as if testing its reality. Zane reached for it before she could, his hands steady as he unhooked the clasp. May I? Rowan swallowed, then nodded. She turned slightly, allowing him to fasten it around her neck. His fingers barely grazed her skin, but the contact sent a shiver through her. As the pendant settled against her collarbone, she pressed her hand over it, feeling the cool weight of it against her skin. You didn't have to do this, she murmured. I wanted to. She turned back to face him, searching his expression. Why me, Zane? His gaze held hers, unwavering. Because you never asked for anything. Her breath caught. Everyone wants something, he continued, his voice low but firm. A deal, a favor, a connection. But you were different from the moment I met you. You didn't care about who I was, what I had, you just saw me. Rowan's pulse pounded. And what do you see in me? Zane didn't hesitate. Someone who doesn't realize how rare she is. The words knocked the air from her lungs. Before she could respond, the soft hum of a phone vibrating against the table shattered the moment. Zane glanced at the screen, his expression darkening instantly. Rowan caught the name flashing across the display. Lillian. She tensed. The woman from the jewelry store. Zane silenced the call without answering, but the flicker of tension in his jaw didn't go unnoticed. Is that something you need to handle? She asked, keeping her voice steady. No, he said immediately, but something in his tone told her otherwise. Rowan set her glass down, studying him. Who is she to you, really? Zane's fingers tapped against the table once before he sighed. Someone who doesn't know when to let go. Her stomach twisted. An ex. Not in the way you think, he said. He hesitated, then leaned back slightly. Lillian's family owns a company I was meant to acquire. They assumed that meant something more than business. Rowan frowned. And did it? Zane's eyes locked onto hers. Not for me. The words should have reassured her, but there was something else lingering beneath them, something unresolved. And for her, Zane exhaled through his nose. She doesn't take rejection well. Rowan absorbed that, the pieces of his world slowly falling into place. The wealth, the power, the expectations, it wasn't just about money, it was about the tangled web of influence and control that came with it. "She'll call again," Rowan said finally. "Probably. And when she does, I'll handle it." Rowan didn't press. She wasn't sure she wanted to know how. Instead, she reached for the pendant again, letting the weight of it anchor her. "Zane, I don't do complicated." His expression softened. "Neither do I." She gave him a look. "That's debatable." For the first time that night, something close to a chuckle escaped him. "Fair." She studied him for a long moment, then sighed. "I don't know where this is going." "Neither do I," he admitted, "but I don't want it to end here." Rowan hesitated, then slowly nodded. Maybe, just maybe, she didn't want it to either. Rowan traced the edge of her pendant as she stood by the railing, the city lights flickering below like scattered stars. The weight of Zane's words still clung to the air between them. He didn't want this to end here, neither did she. But the truth remained, his world was complicated, and she had never been one to chase after complications. Zane stepped beside her, his presence steady, unwavering. He didn't reach for her, didn't push, but she could feel the restrained energy in him. He was waiting. "I don't know what this is," Rowan admitted, turning to face him, "but I know what it could turn into, and I'm not sure I belong in your world." His gaze didn't waver. "You don't have to belong to it, you just have to belong with me." Her breath caught, but she forced herself to hold his stare. "What if your world makes that impossible?" Zane exhaled, rubbing a hand over his jaw. "I won't lie to you, it won't be easy, people will talk, some will assume things about you, about us, but I don't care about any of it, I care about you." Rowan's heart pounded. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that his words weren't just something said in the moment. But she had seen enough in life to know that promises were easier to make than to keep. Before she could say anything, the terrace doors opened, and a sharp voice cut through the night air. "So this is where you've been hiding." Rowan turned to see Lillian standing near the entrance, her expression unreadable but her presence undeniably intrusive. Zane stiffened ever so slightly, but his tone remained calm. "Not hiding. Just enjoying my evening." Lillian's gaze flicked to Rowan, something sharp and assessing in her expression. "Funny, because last I checked, you had obligations that didn't include disappearing without a word." Rowan didn't move, but tension coiled in her stomach. There it was, the part of Zane's world she had been afraid of, assumptions, expectations. Zane's expression didn't change, but there was something in his stance that shifted, something final. "Lillian, whatever you think we had, it was never what you made it out to be." Lillian's lips pressed together, but she didn't back down. "You think you can just walk away?" "I already have," Zane said smoothly. "And I suggest you do the same." For a moment, Lillian seemed to consider her next move, but then she sighed, shaking her head. "You always did like making things difficult." Without another word, she turned and disappeared back inside, leaving nothing but the faint echo of her heels against the marble floor. Rowan exhaled, tension still humming in her veins. She looked at Zane, searching his face. "Is this what I'd have to deal with?" He met her gaze, no hesitation in his eyes. "There will always be people who assume they have a say in my life, but they don't. Only I do, and only you do." The certainty in his voice sent a shiver through her. He wasn't just saying this to convince her. He meant it. Rowan let out a slow breath. "You make things sound so simple." "They are, if you want them to be." She studied him, the man who had walked into her life unexpectedly and refused to leave. He had given her every reason to walk away, but now, standing here with the city stretched out before them, she realized she didn't want to. She stepped closer, lifting her chin. "Then tell me one thing. Anything. If I take this chance, if I say yes, will you fight for it when things get difficult?" Zane's expression softened, but his voice held steel. "I would fight for you every single day." Rowan's heart clenched, and before she could second-guess herself, she closed the space between them, pressing her lips to his. Zane reacted instantly, his hands sliding to her waist, pulling her closer. The kiss was slow, deliberate, filled with all the words they hadn't spoken. When they finally pulled apart, Zane rested his forehead against hers, his breath warm against her skin. "So is that a yes?" Rowan smiled, her fingers curling into his shirt. "It's a yes." Months passed and the world around them shifted, but their connection never faltered. It wasn't always easy. There were whispers, assumptions, challenges, but Zane never wavered, and neither did Rowan. One evening, she returned home from work to find Zane waiting for her. But this time, something was different. The living room was dimly lit, candles flickering across the space. In the center of the room stood Zane, looking more certain than she had ever seen him. Rowan's steps faltered. "What's all this?" Zane took a breath, then slowly lowered himself onto one knee. Her heart stopped. "I told you I would fight for you, every single day," he said, his voice steady. "And I want to keep doing that for the rest of my life." He reached into his pocket, revealing a small velvet box. "Marry me, Rowan." She clapped a hand over her mouth, emotions swelling in her throat. She had never imagined her life leading here to this moment, to this man. But now, standing before him, she couldn't imagine anything else. Tears prickled her eyes as she nodded. "Yes." Zane slipped the ring onto her finger before pulling her into his arms, his lips finding hers in a kiss that sealed everything between them. And for the first time in her life, Rowan knew this was exactly where she was meant to be.